Parallax Month continues. I have a theory that the perfect metal intro song is Chop Suey by System of a Down because it's kind of like interval training. When I first heard it, my ears would feel raw during the screaming, then they felt like they were soothed during the singing parts. I think that's why I also latched onto BT Bam relatively early in my metal journey. When I first heard Colors, it was kind of like I could grit it out through the heavy parts to make it to the pretty parts. Fast forward 5 years and I was fully into metal, but when the singles for Parallax 2 started being released, the like spacey, bluesy, clean section of Telos immediately grabbed my attention. This section is really cool and it's still one of my favorite moments on the album. However, it took me a while longer, and it took trying to play the song on guitar for me to realize that the really spectacular thing about the song is maybe actually the really long, intense first section leading up to the clean middle section. And after all of this great misdirection, I have finally arrived at the topic of this video. Thrashy death metal stuff is both really cool in reaching a level of intensity and unrelentingness that I love, but it also has a lot of nifty details in how it's organized that I'm going to pick apart. Let's get to it, or in the words of Adidas, just get it done. Big picture, there are 3 big areas before the start of the clean space blues section. We have the thrash stuff, mesmerizing stuff, and then one of the sickest breakdowns in all of music, which incidentally is not even the sickest breakdown on this song, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to get to the second half of this. Zooming in, the thrash part has kind of 2 main ideas. The really cool chromatic upper neighbor riff, and then the kind of answering descending and tremolo riff. And then there's this little syncopated dotted quarter fragment that I'm calling the portal because it's used as a bridge to get to and from these different ideas. Zooming in a little more, these 2 ideas have different internal structures, both of which are very common. The thrash idea is structured as AABA. And the descending thing is structured as ABAC. I'm going to argue that the AABA structure here, and even more in the next riff, is reminiscent of the first 8 measures of a blues structure, which sits on a 1 chord for 4 measures, a 4 chord for 2 measures, and then back to 1 for 2 more measures, so AABA. This is the basic shape of this thrash section here, though the harmony doesn't quite line up with the blues structure. We get twice through this riff starting on D sharp, then once starting on C sharp, a whole step down, and then once more starting on D sharp. That's an arbitrary similarity to the blues, you might be thinking. But this comparison will make more sense in a moment. You have my word, and my word is my bond. ABAC shapes are also super common in metal, as I talk about all the time on this channel. Here's this particular one, which is at least metrically straightforward, so all the A, B, A, and C sections are the same length. The weird thing about it, though, is that the C section borrows the same little motive from what I'm calling the portal. This is such a characteristic BT Bam thing, but it kind of threatens to make this whole formal story I'm telling explode. In most metal, riff 1 is riff 1 and riff 2 is riff 2, and what happens in riff 1 stays in riff 1. The two separate riffs might be inspired by the same sort of thing, but they're probably going to be two separate riffs in most metal. Or sometimes you'll get two riffs that are so similar that it's actually like, oh, this is actually the same riff, just with like some embellishments or whatever. So you, instead of having riff 1 and riff 2, you have riff 1 and riff 1 prime maybe. But what happens here is something different. These little motives move around kind of freely between different riffs to the point where things get so granular that we maybe have to stop thinking of riffs as the basic building blocks in the first place and think instead about motives like you would in classical music. But it's still more modular than that. Classical music, normally the motives are kind of, it's more like free-flowing how they fit in. Here it's like you drop a motive here and then you do the next motive and then you do the next one, and they're always the same each time they show up. They just kind of get scrambled in these different ways. Kind of an interesting idea that if you look into too long can open up an abyss of meta theory. It kind of borders on the famously unsolvable questions of like, how do we decide what counts as its own thing in music and what is musical similarity? But we don't have time for that. We got to keep going. Come on. So that was the thrash section. If I've been editing this like I planned to, I will have been filling in details on a big formal diagram, which will be a little bit of a pain for the future version of me editing this. So I'd like to say thank you to that guy, whoever I end up being in a few weeks after I film this. Did you notice this little motive from the end of the thrash riffs? Did you like it? I heard you liked it. Here's a whole section built out of it. We have two versions of a riff built out of this motive, both built out of a few complete and then one truncated iterations of the motive. The first one is like this, with two complete versions and then a 3-note truncated version. And the second is like this, a rhythmic expansion, where it's a 4-note truncated version at the end, and then it also has a different drum feel and some palm muting to make it feel pretty different, and like there are some other small changes. At the end of a few times through these rhythmically wonky riffs are different endings. First we get this, then this, and then this. And if that's not an expanding return, I don't know what is. Inside the riffs, we have another AABA structure, this time very clearly alluding to a blues structure, because during the B section, the riff is harmonically shifted up a perfect fourth, which is the same thing that happens to the chords in a 12-bar blues. I should put my cards on the table and say what I'm getting at with all this blues structure stuff. Basically, we're headed to a blues solo. And soon after, on the grand scale of the album, we are headed to the surf rock blues wackiness of Bloom. The start of Telos isn't where the like teasing the blues sound world starts. That starts a lot earlier on the album, but it certainly picks up momentum here. It's also worth mentioning from an intensity standpoint that this mesmerizing section is literally 364 straight 16th notes in the guitars without a single break. Very fun to play if you like doing this and then being way up here and having 1/16th note to drop way back down to the 4th fret from the like 19th fret. But once you get it down, I have to say it's a very high velocity, good time thrill ride. We then arrive at this sick breakdown riff. This is the most straightforward of the section so far. We just repeat the same pattern without changes 4 times, and the last time we get a short transitional linear tag leading into the blues solo. If you want another expanding return, there's kind of a rhythmic one here. We've had this dotted rhythm all over the section, especially in what I call the portal. And then the dotted rhythm kind of takes over here during the transition. And there's still some fun to be had here analytically because, like most of the other sections so far, each of these blocks has an internal harmonic shift. The first riff of the song had that AABA moving down a whole step. The second section had the AABA moving up a fourth, and this one has an AABC, because it doesn't go back to the A, moving up a minor third. Not exactly the same, but repetition not only legitimizes, repetition significafies. Trademark that. And because we've heard this same harmonic shape twice already, and we'll hear it even more prominently pretty soon on the album, I definitely hear this as alluding to the blues in the same way that those other sections did. I also can't help drawing a small bit of attention to this as a cool approach to harmony. It's like they have different types of harmonic motion, all like nested at different levels of scale. In the big picture, the first block is centered on D sharp, the second block is centered on A sharp, and the third comes to rest on F sharp. And then zooming in a little, it's the first block is actually D sharp with that lower whole step neighbor, so D sharp and C sharp. Second one is A sharp with a brief upward motion to D sharp. And the third is evenly split between D sharp and F sharp, so the minor third apart. And then all of these chords within these are also, they get chromatic upper neighbors. So tacked onto each of those, there's kind of this prominent descending chromatic motion, which, you know, if you're looking for unity or coherence or any of those things, that's kind of like, that ties this whole section together harmonically, even though the keys are kind of jumping all over the place. And then on top of that, there's kind of this like whole tone-ish, but not really whole tone, because there's half steps, but it definitely has that like whole tone symmetric scale flavor, especially in the breakdown section when Paul does this solo over it. Which, as a side note, I didn't even realize this solo was here. I heard it, but I didn't really like pay attention to it ever until I went to learn this. And I was like, come on, Paul, just chill out for once. Let me have an easy section. But of course, if he had chilled out, this would be less cool. So I guess thank you, Paul. But yeah, I focused on the tonal harmony that BT Bam does in the Layer Goes to Rest video, but this is a great example of the sort of inventive, like modular, ad hoc metal harmony that they use, where it's like, you know, it's all unified by this sort of interval motion, and these formal shapes, and it kind of covers this broad harmonic spectrum. And there are still kind of centers, there's tonal centers, but it's not tonal music. It's not, you know, using diatonic scales. This script has gotten completely out of hand, as they tend to do when I'm talking about BT Bam. But if you will, what have you, here's a playthrough of this section I've been talking about. As Miles Davis said, there is no best in art, but if there were to be an argument about a best BT Bam song, surely Telos has to be up there for its super sick mix of intensity, complexity, variety, and scale. I mean, for Owl's sake, I filled a whole video and I haven't even talked about my favorite clean section that they ever wrote, maybe, or one of the sickest breakdowns they ever wrote, or the really sick, wacky transition out of this into Bloom. The song is just like so good. Say it with me. More parallax, more parallax. Okay, if you insist, you'll get your wish next week. See ya.